So it's interesting that Kim Dean was basically deeply influenced by Western scholarship, and he was very, he thought of it very highly. At the same time, though, he came up with this idea that Western scholarship alone or science could not be used to fully understand the earliest parts of Vietnamese history. For that, you needed something else, and this is why he developed Huyền sư. According to Kim Dean, what Huyền sư was it was a mixture of an appropriate amount of scientific approach with an appreciation for the poetic, the dreamlike. The words that come up that he uses a lot are things like mơ mộng, lơ mơ, this kind of vague kind of aspects of culture that science itself could not fully identify. This, he said, was in the past, and the objective of scholars was to combine the scientific with an appreciation for this non-scientific, kind of vague, dreamlike aspects of culture. And through those, you'd be able to truly appreciate what happened in the past. How he did that is something very complex, and I'm going to talk about that more later. But what's interesting, I think, is just this combination of ideas that he was putting together. What's interesting is that I think Kim Dean is a classic example of what we might call a decolonization scholar. On the one hand, he fully embraces the ideas of French scholars, but then at the same time, he resists them by saying they do not fully explain Vietnamese reality. But the way he determines that there's a separate Vietnamese reality is essentially by buying into a kind of French racist discourse which said that the Asians were different and that the Vietnamese, they're not really sophisticated, they're kind of le me, kind of confused, and therefore not ready to govern over themselves. Kim Dean, however, doesn't use this kind of what was initially a negative racist discourse in the same ways, though. Instead, he turns it around to be something positive. We are different from Europeans because we are le me, we're dreamlike, we have a kind of poetic spirit to us, and therefore, if you want to understand us, you have to use these superior Western techniques, but those alone are not enough. Me, the insider, who can also identify these aspects of the culture that are different from the West, these are also important. And so it's this classic example of someone who's embracing the West, but then resisting it, but the resistance comes by using the ideas that the West have created to basically place the other in an inferior position. The only difference is that an inferior depiction is then reversed and becomes something different or superior that the Westerners cannot apprehend. Finally, another really interesting aspect about this idea of Huyền sư is that Kim Dean felt that in the past, in this kind of vague, indistinct history of early Vietnam, there were virtues there that were very important. And one of them was a spirit of nationalism, of ethnic nationalism. And one of the reasons why he wanted people to truly appreciate Huyền sư is because he wanted them to be able to capture and relive and re-feel that spirit of national unity that was there in the past. Why couldn't they experience it in the present? According to Kim Dean, it was because the Western culture of individualism had destroyed the kind of collective feeling that people had long enjoyed, and that therefore they had to find a new way to reappropriate or to relive or re-feel that spirit. This again is totally fascinating because basically he's taking a modern Western concept, nationalism, and saying that it used to exist in the past in Vietnam, but it was destroyed because of a Western concept of individualism. But by using Western scientific approaches, they were going to be able to recapture this spirit from the past. Again, it's just this crazy mixture of contradictory ideas and approaches, but ultimately it was very heartfelt. That's something you definitely can sense. As Gim Dinh clearly felt that Vietnamese society was in some kind of sense of crisis. It needed a core, and that core needed to have a spirit to it. It needed to unite people together, and that's what he was looking for. And as someone who was very deeply imbued with Western ideas and scholarship, his approach was to try to look through those ideas in order to find a way out. But as someone who had been colonized, he was also kind of didn't necessarily perhaps have the strength or the confidence just to be an individual member of human society. Instead, he still had to kind of fight back against that colonial situation and try to find a space for himself in the Vietnamese in the modern world. Fascinating, fascinating person, and I look forward to reading more and talking about more of his writings in the future. Texture, point 1.